I want to welcome you to the memorial for Bettye Mathews, who passed away far too soon, in my opinion, on April 26th of this year. As family members or friends of Bettye, you all know what I mean when I say that Bettye was a lady with a 1,000-watt smile.
Yes.
If you have been watching the pictures on the screen, you can see that smile on most of her pictures. And you got to know that that smile was her natural state. That was Bettye. Once you were drawn in by the smile, you found a person who was unique. She was smart. She was funny. She was loving. She was playful. She had an extraordinary imagination. I could go on and tell you about the attributes of Bettye, but since most of you knew her, you knew about those attributes. They were what made Bettye Marie Mathews special to us. Especially to me. I miss her now, and I know I always will. Bettye was a bit of an alcoholic. That's workaholic.
An entirely different direction than I expected.
We needed that, George.
Once she determined that a project was worthwhile or necessary, whether it was at school or at work, she tackled that project, no matter how tedious, how routine, how whatever had to be done. She tackled it, and she would take it through to some logical conclusion, no matter how many hours it took. I met Bettye back in 1996 through the efforts of one of our guests here today, Eileen Johnston. Eileen, you want to wave so everybody knows? I just returned from Australia, where I spent 4 years working in planes there, and I was working for Simplex in Gardner, Massachusetts. Eileen, at the time, was a secretary to one of the VPs. So I was at the time living in a local hotel. My position required that I travel up and down the East Coast almost every week. And I was trying to decide and find a place to live. So I was a pretty busy guy. One day Eileen asked me, or suggested to me, that she had a friend. She said the friend was a beautiful and wonderful person, and someone I would enjoy meeting. As busy as I was, she suggested, you got to call this girl. As busy as I was, I didn't do that readily. And every time I came into the office, Eileen would question me. Now, there's two things you got to know about Eileen. Number one, she is very persistent. Number two, she knew I hadn't called Bettye because she's talking to her every week. So this went on for multiple weeks, actually. It went on for quite a while. Finally, I said, well, I'm going to call this girl. I'm going to call this Bettye. So I did. I called her and asked her out for a Friday evening. Well, I wanted to make a good impression. So I booked a table at one of the best restaurants, in my opinion, in Worcester, the sole proprietor. So I said, well, I'll pick you up around 7-ish. Well, here comes the first hiccup in this new budding relationship. I failed to say, I will pick you up and we will go out to dinner. 7 o'clock to me was normal dinner time. That was just based on my schedule. And I thought, besides, who would want to eat a fine dinner before 7 o'clock? Well, it turns out that a school teacher who gets 25 minutes for lunch and has to eat them in the cafeteria while she monitors 50 kids gets hungry before 7 o'clock. So understanding my unstated intentions to have dinner, Bettye went ahead and had some dinner prior to Sunday. This created a very awkward kind of a situation after we were seated at the restaurant, and she said to me, "Well, I've already eaten." So I proceeded to have a very fine meal. Well, Bettye had a bowl of clam chowder as we went through the kind of getting to know you routine. But we got over that hurdle. Let's see. And I found out that Bettye was a school teacher, 6th grade school teacher. And I thought to myself, what a gig, what a deal. You get off work at 3:30, you have all the summer off. Well, as I got to know her better, those illusions were shattered. Bettye was a very dedicated teacher, and she often worked, maybe she was one of the last people to leave the school building except for the janitorial and maintenance staff. And those few days that she did come home, a little bit early, she usually spent them grading papers and developing lesson plans for the next week or so. So I told you that those illusions were shattered, and she was not, it wasn't such a great gig after all. Bettye was absolutely dedicated to providing her students with the very best possible education that she could provide. The school district that she was working in was not a wealthy one, and they didn't always have the greatest resource materials that they could provide. When Bettye found resource materials were lacking, which seemed to be about every time, she would spend hours researching and developing her own materials. And she would work on how she's going to present them until she was satisfied with the results.
Okay, let me know.
Bettye used her.
Cancel dessert.
I didn't realize.
Sorry. It's just not going to work out.
No, that is something I would never do.
Yeah, I know that.
Never dessert. Did you want them to wait so you're not?
Yeah. Just another few
That's
minutes.
fine.
Just another few minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Bettye used her tremendous.
Never mind.
Okay,
No problem.
okay.
Bettye used her tremendous sense of humor and extraordinary imagination to make her classroom fun and entertaining, so her students were never bored, and they didn't even realize they were learning while they were having fun. Whenever a former student, now going off to college or somewhere, would return and visit their favorite teacher, Bettye, they often thanked her for teaching them how to learn, which in my opinion is one of the greatest compliments a teacher could receive. And Eileen, obviously everything worked out well. And you were right. She was a beautiful and wonderful person, and someone I did enjoy spending the last 26 years with. So the lady with the 1,000-watt smile left us far before I was ready for that to happen. But let's remember the good times and all the fun things we were able to do together. Thank you. Workaholic.
Great job, Joy. Yeah.
I think I heard you laughing when she did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we have them fold it out and
Yes.
pick up? What was the- I'm saying, see if we have her do it now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's all I'm saying.
She's already got it ready.
Okay, all right.
See you,
Sounds
Mike.
good. Well, good for you, my lady. Yeah, actually, it was a serve it.
How long is that?
Okay. Well, I guess I started a little early.
No.